Well, it turns out she's eating all these fats, pretty high percentage, good protein. I mean, she fit this exactly. She was like a living example that, whether she knew it or not, she was very muscular and lean, and eating this way and never really touched the weight. I think she does some yoga a few days a week, which I know can build some muscle and balance. And then the walking was her primary mode, which is, I know, another topic. This is all about nutrition, but I do like exercise, and that's what I'm gonna do from now on these monthly talks, is either nutrition or body part pain or exercise. And the exercise part is really, if you're walking, and I don't think I have this, but the main aerobic base is about an hour, which most people walk about 3 miles per hour. If you go back, and this new book I'm reading right now, I'm only partway through, but it's called Move Your DNA, and she has such great stuff in there. I can't believe it. I mean, it's. I thought we were good on three-dimensional motion and mixing things up. She takes it even a step further. I mean, it's not just walk, but it's like walk with different types of shoes. The minimalist shoe wear, walk on different gradients, up and down, walk on different, grass sometimes, then rocks. Because every time you put and form how your foot hits the ground, that's micro trauma, good or bad, to your cells, bone cells, nerve cells, muscle cells. That's what determines a lot of how we function. Which it's so great, I can't wait to read the rest of the book. But basically it boils down to 3 miles a day of walking. And if you do that, some people say, well, can I take it up a notch? Yes, and that's what I think we called it, as a little bonus thing, where we put heart rate training 180 minus your age. I know I'm kind of going around here, but if you're fat adapted, you're going to lose the fat, which tends to lose inches to a degree. And you diminishing returns set in after that. You can only lose so much fat and so many inches, pounds. But if your base of every day is upwards of 3 miles, it doesn't always have to be right in a row. It can be a mile in the morning, a mile here, a mile, or tenth of a mile, and it all adds up throughout the day. And then you add a couple days a week of strength training, and then maybe one day, we call it sprinting. I'm not saying you have to run a 10-second 100 meters, which is like world class. No one's going to do that in here, but you would just do something like a really high hill once in a while, once a week, or lift really proportionally heavier. It doesn't have to. I'm not saying 500 pounds and do a CrossFit workout and do all this crazy stuff. But okay, so you do like a high interval training.
Yeah, do a couple of high pass intervals, and then just a routine for things. I don't walk well since I got out of cross country back in college. I end up your knees pretty much.
All right, so if your mode's cycling, the only thing I would say to that, I know this is kind of an extreme example. I had a guy that cycled a lot to and from work, and he slept 8 hours a day, and he sat for 8 hours a day. So for basically most of his life, he was like this. Now, if he's laying down, he was in a fetal position, which basically was flexed. And he came in here and he had like this groin pain, and I knew I should have known better. I mean, bilateral groin pain, that usually isn't a good sign. But I'm like, maybe this or that. We did some things. Didn't really get better. We turned out to have severe osteoporosis when he had the osteoporosis, the bone mineral density test and all that, because he had almost no weight bearing. So some weight bearing, I know you know this, but just to throw that out there, where if you mix that up, plus again, you're exposing your cells to different patterns of positioning and movements. That combined with the proper nutrition, I don't think you can go too wrong. No, but it's good to, it's kind of like, it's analogous to meets, where if one day you cycle, the next day you walk, and then you might go up and down stairs another day, and you might, cross-country ski. So.
I didn't say, it was written on your announcement, we're going to talk about blood type, heavy diet, is that?
I don't think we put on there, we just put the three like evidence-based, which a lot of this stuff, I'm just going by evidence, it's in the research. The blood type, I think the best, and I know I reference this a lot, is that metabolic typing book, where he talks, it's just a really small chapter. I'm not trying to downplay it, just like a lot of things when I'm talking here, I'm not really opposed to anything. It's just kind of presenting the facts. But there's a little bit of what not to eat. It's more on that negative part of like, here's what to take not to do if you're an A positive or an AB or an O type. I think they do a pretty good job of explaining that, and that's why I reference that book a lot. It's a really, really dense book, a lot of topics.
And that author is,
Of the metabolic typing.
that is Jim Holmes.
I won't, I'm drawing a blank right now. Trisha is the second name, and it's Richard, I'll get it. Oh, actually, it's in your, do you mind getting that metabolic typing? I think it's in that or it's like this small little, I don't know why.
I just wondered if there's anything to that, something I knew gave me a book on that.
Well,
It was interesting, I don't know if there's any foundation to.
it's very little, it's from what I can gather. I think it's Diademo was the last name, it was like husband and wife researchers. They wrote a lot on blood type, and I think it was a little more hype than actual factual stuff. What, as we go along, I mean, I can keep going. The one thing, I'll talk in questions, of course. On the, always thought this was a great thing, this carbohydrate curve, which, yeah, well, I'm just seeing where it was. So if you have this going vertically, grams of carbs per day, and you have way up here 300 plus, and then you go over and you see this guy who's kind of bigger in a suit. I guess meant to represent like a typical American person. And as you go down, you know, there's the danger zone. So if you're eating 300 grams, which would be like 1,200 calories, because you multiply that by 4, of carbs a day, again, it would. Some people will say, well, what about if I ate 300 grams of vegetables? I don't know how you can chew that much. I mean, if you can, maybe you're mincing it up, or you have like a blender. Now, some of the latest thing, and this is where you go down the rabbit hole, or whatever they call it, rabbit, wormhole, one of those, rabbit, where if you blend that up, you're losing some nutrients. They claim, and I don't know how they say it. What's that? I'm not sure on that, but that you're losing like that, just like if you cook the meat too much, you're losing the nutrients, or if you overcook things. There's something about blending, but let's just say you keep most of the nutrients. It would be hard to get that many, because that's been asked. We're talking like what's typical, 300 grams, and I ate some sugar here, and some candy, and then this thing, and this supposedly healthy bar that had all these grams of sugar. That's where, as we keep going down here, so between 150 and 300, again, it's going to vary. Obviously, as you get closer to 300, so there's William Wolf. You'll get this insidious weight gain. Insidious meaning like, well, it's not that insidious. You kind of know why it's coming because you're eating too many carbs. And people are like, wow, I'm just gaining weight. I'm not sure. It's usually because they're in that zone. Then it shows there 150 grams to 100, somewhere that's 400 to 600 calories a day. Effortless weight maintenance. So once you get to where you want to maintain,
You're multiplying the carbs by 4, did you say?
to get, if we want calories, because these are in grams, so times 4 gives you the calories. Because some people are converting, because I know, and that's still, even after doing these for many years and writing it out, it's hard to, I kind of did a little math where if you did a true 50% fat, 25% protein, 25% carbs. Again, it can vary. 50% fat would give you between 18 to 36 grams of fat per meal, which is 160 to 320 calories. Because you multiply that by 9. Because there's 9 calories per gram. I know, that's only one, that's 9. Fat and carbs, you multiply by 4 to get to the calories. So basically, if I'm eating 20 to 40 grams, which we mentioned in that one study with 70-year-olds per meal, 20 to 40 grams times 4 is 80 to 160 calories. I'm giving a big range because I just want to get that range with how easy. And then if it's carbs, 20 to 40 grams of carbs is also 100 to 80 to 160 calories. Yes.
You count carbs as minus the fiber content.
I see.
Some of them off.
I guess
Now,
for
some
this-
people do, they
Oh, I
count
know.
the carbs as total carbs versus the active carbs.
I guess for simplicity, I was not considering that in this equation. But if you take that, and yes, if you have, so what he's referencing, if you have the fiber, you get 20 grams of carbs, and if it's 5 grams of fiber, it's a net 15 grams of carbs. Because the fiber, depending if it's soluble or insoluble, it's going to basically pass through and not be stuck to you as fat. So I was not considering that exactly, but that's a good point. So you could adjust that accordingly with carbs.
Is there any difference between raw and cooked tomatoes? You always heard it was more nutritious to cook them, but in this case,
Oh.
with inflammation, it's like zero. I mean, like both of them are just bad.
Yeah, if it's true, if you have that inflammation, you're trying to get rid of anything to reduce inflammation, cooked or no cooked, no good.
Now, Chaz,
So I never
you're
heard-
given these diets, and then you said it's like 2 days a week you can cheat. Are you gonna throw any of that cheat in? Because it's really hard to live
I know.
with people and not eat
So-
any carbs.
I like the 80-20 rule because everything I've read is this Pareto's law, which some people might be familiar, Pareto, but basically, I think it all started with peas. So the guy took 100 seeds to grow peas and basically found out that 20% or 20 of those seeds yielded 80% of the crop. So there's this 80-20 rule that's everywhere. If you devote 20% of your time or investing, they talked about that, where 20% of your investments yield 80% of your money eventually. And hopefully you find the right 20% to get the most out of your 80. It's 80-20% shows up over and over. So the 80-20 from a nutrition and even exercise standpoint is if 80% of your weight loss or gain comes from good or bad nutrition, 20% comes from exercise. That's what I was saying earlier, where if you have great eating habits and you're there, and here's the 80%. If 80% of your meals is like right on within the, kind of putting together what I talked about, where I know big broad stuff, but if you put this together, 80% of the time you're right on. You can eat and drink that other 20%, whatever you want. I mean, that's why I tell people in here, sometimes I think I'm even close to 90-10, but you may see me, this is our Mountain Dew, Coca-Cola, and potato chips. If those had good nutrition, that's all I would eat. I would say, I'm not even talking about nutrition, I'm just gonna drink Coke and eat chips.
And you don't down on chips, but they freaking have potatoes in them.
Exactly. So unfortunately, they're no good and you have to eat. Plus, when you eat well, you actually do feel better and your energy's up. But if you eat 20%, give some slack there. And bad, as long as 80% is really good, you're fine. So you don't have to be perfect. I thought you had a question. Oh, yeah. And then basically, and I'm just going to touch upon this, if you keep going on this carb curve, weight loss, sweet spot is somewhere between 50 and 100. I know a lot of people are like, whoa, that's low. It truly is. It's extremely low. It's hard. It's very difficult to do. That's why you start, I guess, somewhat higher. As long as you're avoiding the very high and just you're aware of this, even being aware, they've shown with weight loss, fat loss primarily, one of the best things has nothing to do with anything that I talked about. All you have to do is track something. Even if you track your weight, and body weight is not a great thing to track because, like you said, it can fluctuate. I could gain weight or gain muscle. I could lose weight and I've lost not that much fat, but I've lost muscle, which isn't good. If you track weight, this one guy, all he did, he was a computer scientist guy. He gained a lot of weight. He sat in front of a computer and drank Mountain Dew and ate sugar and ate sad crap every day. And all he did, he's like, I'm 250 pounds. I know, like you said, with your body weight, most people know, we will probably get their body fat test. I weigh 180. I probably do really well at 150. Whatever, I'm just making up a number. He was at 250. He knew if I was around 180, I need to lose 70 pounds is what this guy said. I would do really well. He had no idea what that body fat was, what his waist would be then, what he would look like or feel like. All he did was track, and he goes, I'm going to give myself a plus or minus. I'm 250. As long as I don't weigh any more than 250, but no less than 245. He gave a min and a max. And all he did was track it, and he was a computer guy, so it's all on software, and he'd get on the scale. It was on his awareness, so he was like, okay, I'm 246. The next day he started that. He's like, good, I'm in my range. And then, now he had to adjust that, because as he knew his weight, now he's like, okay, 246, I don't want to go any higher than 248. I'll give myself some slack. At least it's not 250. But I don't want to go any lower than 242. I can't remember the exact numbers, but he gave this range, 5 to 6 pounds. Because he was aware of that, people say, well, how did he lose weight? Well, if you tracked it every day, you made yourself get on the scale, you're 246 that first day, you go about your life and you start to go, well, I'm going to park a little bit further away, so I'm going to walk, burn a little more calories. Because I lost 4 pounds, but I still wasn't all the way to that 245, my minimum. And then, I usually get that donut on the way in, so I'm not going to avoid that. So it was in his awareness, he started to make choices based on that tracking. That is hugely powerful from a psychological standpoint. That's huge. So if you can know all this and practice all this, which I do believe is important, and definitely there's some fine-tuning things that will make, even if you're aware of it, even better. But that's a huge thing I want to say in this group, or whenever I talk, because it's so powerful. I mean, it's more of a psych. I know it's like with another analogy was like paying off debt, and the one thing I was that, you just pay the highest interest credit card. Well, if the highest interest has a huge amount, but you have one that's a smaller interest rate, but it's only $500, psychologically, if you pay that off, you're doing something, you're getting the ball rolling. Same with like weight loss, especially if someone has like this huge amount of weight. I mean, that's like looking up a mountain going, oh my God, it's gonna take forever. But it's all that, like they say, it starts with one step and then you go from there. That's works. And then one other thing I'll say, I worked with a 400-pound person. Well, he was 400. I met him when he was 200 pounds. I used to see him walking in the club all the time. And, it's one of those where nowadays I think he would probably get loose skin. And I said, I wonder. And I never knew the guy, and I started to know him. And all he did is he pulled out of his pocket, what he did. I'm like, wow, you were 400 pounds. I heard the story, and now you're 200. And he kept it off most of his life. But from like teenager to I think 40, he was 400 pounds. Then from 40 to like 80, I don't think he's alive anymore, but 80-some years old, that's pretty amazing. I mean, if you're 400 and you keep that up, I'm like, what did you do? I thought this magic secret. He's like, I'll show you one time. I carry it with me. I'm like, you carry it? And I'm thinking, something you have to have all this complexity. And like they say, we'll make things, like when people come in and they perceive their pain is so complex, they're going to think it takes all this complex stuff, like I'm going to bring out this huge computer and all these gadgets, and usually it's as simple as maybe doing a few trigger points and you get to the source of the problem. It's like, it's that simple, and our pain goes down. And his was like, pull it out, and it was consistency, which is a key variable. Doing something consistent, tracking it, like I used in that one example of computer guide, so it's in your awareness. That's another key thing. And all it was you just did it consistently. It was 3 meals a day. It kind of fit, like I used that lady's example of she just walked and did some yoga and ate really well and kind of fit this. And he stuck with it. I mean, I looked at this paper and literally it was like this little, not even 3x5, and he folded it. He had it for like 40 years. It was the whole thing. He's like, I just eat out of these categories, which are very similar to this, and I stick with it. And all he did was like walk, and then he started to swim. That's all he did. Now I think you should have some strength training a couple days a week because it's a 2 muscle thing. But other than that, that's pretty much it. So I thought that was important too. That's a little bit off. It's not like exact carbs and protein, but it does help. Any other questions or comments?
Can you give us an example of like what you eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Yeah, I mean, my breakfast, if you want to know, during the week, just by some lifestyle and the way I choose with 2 kids and my wife, it's not much time in the morning. So I don't even know what my ratio is, but again, my energy is good for 5 hours or so with it. Spinach that I do chop up, so whether I lose nutrients that way in the blender, take a chance. Water, I put a tablespoon of coconut oil. Now I'm using that protein, the whey protein, 20 grams, so it's whatever the scoop is. I will still put a nut butter tablespoon, whether it's, and yes, I do break the rule on this one. Peanuts, which is like a legume, so, yeah, break the rule, not true paleo. Or nut butter. And then, avocado. Usually a half of an avocado, sometimes full, and I could almost last the whole day if I eat that, because it's a lot of good fat. And then if I do put fruit, and just for a thickener, I use banana.
And drink it.
And then I drink it. It's almost chewable. Yeah, it looks, if you look at it, it looks gross. We had the pickiest niece, I have all these nieces, and we used to watch two of them a lot. And she looked at this and she's like, oh, look at someone puke. I'm like, you should try it. She goes, no way. I'm like, whatever. So then I set it down and I noticed, she's like, and she drank like half of it. I'm like, oh, it must not be that bad. And it looked terrible, but you can make it taste. I mean, you have to like put some cinnamon and put your little the stevia. Now you have to use stevia, yeah. Splenda.
Well, no, what
You'll
about
die if you drink
Truvia?
Splenda.
That's
Just Truvia. Oh yeah, Truvia. Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
stevia with some steroids in it.
No, it's blossom.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay. Yeah, that's what I've heard. I really don't try.
That's interesting how you are, kind of cheating. Banana is really high starch.
Oh, and I'll get to your
Yeah.
cheat thing too. That was
Go
the
ahead,
one last.
lunch.
Lunch, it's like today, what I have. So that one happened to be meat. What was it? Some type of steak. I have no idea what cut. It's pretty fatty, I'm sure, because it's satisfying. And then that blend my wife made had. It's always good to have a good wife who would make good food. That would be terrible. I would probably I truly would just have a meat and a vegetable. That was it. And you might see me sometime, I mean, eat the salad, which will have greens and an assortment of vegetables. And then it's either chicken or turkey or tuna or fish or some type of meat. I just rotate that. And then dinner.
So she makes your lunch for you?
Actually, I use leftovers for lunch. I just put together whatever we had for that. And then dinner, which was from the night before, and then the current night, it's very similar. We almost always have some type of, I guess you call it salad or like vegetable mix, and then meat. I mean, it's
Pretty basic.
yeah, it's pretty darn boring. But that's the other key thing. And people overestimate the variety. Because some people look, and I know I always got this my whole life. I've been like this since day one. My parents did not, my brother did not. Maybe I'm adopted, I don't know. But and I don't. They just never told me. But I always ate like that, or similar to this, except for that low-fat craze, which was stupid that I jumped on low-fat bandwagon. But that's seems like nothing.
Why am I asking your blood pressure?
A positive, A plus.
Oh, interesting.
And the cheat thing is, I go back and forth with this because I know you've been in a couple of these and it's changed over the years because there's different facts. Yeah, some principles are still the same, but some definitely changed. Is, yeah, give yourself that cheat. That's where the 20% comes in. Whether it's all in one day. The physiology is they said, oh, if you do it all in like this 12-hour window, you, like on a Saturday, it's easy for me because that's a more lax day and you need structure or whatever. You eat whatever you want. What happens if you do that too much, I found? Yes, it's supposed to increase your testosterone, even in women, that's good for muscle building and all this blah, 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 physiology stuff. And it makes you real and feel like, yeah, you're not depriving yourself. But what happens is you feel like sad crap most of the time. You live the sad crap after that because you eat kind of bad, and what you'll do notice is your cheat days won't be as cheaty as you think, or as not as you think as you go along, because you just feel horrible. I mean, I wanted some of those days I would wait for Saturday, like, now I can drink the Coke and do all this, and I'd be like, oh, now we get things smaller, so my cheats are much smaller. I don't even, it's amazing. Like I would have never thought it would work that way, but it's like, I could look what I used to devour tons of. I'm like, maybe I'll have it, maybe I won't. It's just something changes in physiology and brain chemistry.
You don't get a couple out there anymore.
I do, but it's much smaller. It's barely, it's just not much.
You don't crave it.
Correct.
Vinegar as a supplement instead of alcohol.
What's that, vinegar?
Vinegar, yeah.
You Could, yeah.
There's nothing said about it.
I know like the apple cider vinegar is good for a lot of things. I'll put that in tea once in a while, or in that shape, but it'll,
Nothing wrong with it. All under vegetable.
I guess it would, fruit. So hopefully that was helpful. I know there's other stuff on intermittent fasting and other topics we use, sometimes we talk about, but
Well, I know you talked about dairy needing to be high fat, in other words, unprocessed more so than 100%. Yes, you have a source of the unpasteurized altogether.
And we tried that, I did do that for a while, and it gets crazy. Like again, I'll admit, I'm kind of like this OCD, or what one lady called CDO, because it's being off that word, so. But it got so crazy that my wife's like, I will shoot you if you keep going. It's like, you're gonna drive out here for this, and then we have to go here for this, and then you're gonna, hug that tree on the way there, and you're gonna do this, all that. And it's just like crazy. So, well, it's supposed to be genetically, I do, but no, not anymore.
So,
Same with the low cholesterol thing. That was high and now it's not. I'm
So,
assuming
eliminating dairy anyway.
get a book on carbs would be the thing.
that, or if you if you take that carb curve and just what you eat, especially if it has a label. Although I could summarize this whole talk in one sentence where you don't eat anything that has a label. Now I know in nature things don't have a label, but like apples have a label in the store, but if it's naturally doesn't have a label, you probably won't be eating that. Like they don't necessarily have a label on a cow or a label on a fish or whatever, but they do want you to package it. But that's one way to do that. But if you take that carb curve and you go, okay, and you start adding up what you eat, and if you start to go, wow, I'm like in the 200 range, maybe you start to, it's like the guy that tracked his weight, you just start to make some decisions like, well, that has 20 grams of carb, that's kind of high, maybe I'll go with the thing that has 10. That's how you start to learn a little bit more, but just that awareness level. That's a huge thing. Once I replaced carbs with fat, that's a huge turnaround. It's just a shocker to hear that. I think for some people, once and you'll go forever. I mean, endurance even, I thought, there's no way this is going to work because you got to eat spaghetti and eat your gels and all that carb stuff on the way. But all that does is
High
makes,
protein pastas and some other type versus.
it's probably better than the regular, but it's still ultimately a grain is a grain.
Yeah.
You're not.
If you're gonna make a choice of cheese, and you have 20% of your diet, like you said, you've gotten less, you feel bad. Cheese, and you really could have a small bout of a tortilla or a pasta.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of pizza crust or something.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the day, mostly protein, vegetables, and that.
Correct. So that's it's just your cheese. Yeah, I always forget about that. Because I never eat these all, I have no idea. Any other questions? Yes.
Oh, I saw that you were going to talk about like the exercises you should do for your body type, like if you're endomorph, ectomorph,
Oh.
mesomorph. Yeah, because I'm endomorph, and now that I'm in my 40s, my ankles are really starting to bother me. Before it was my knees. So I love to do the treadmill, but it just seems like it's just getting worse as I get older.
The best thing, okay, what I can say in a nutshell with that is, it's almost reverse of what we were talking about the cycling before. You would almost choose something that's a little less, well, especially non-machine based. Even if that means walking on different surfaces, and this takes a little while, and I'm not saying you have to go all the way barefoot, minimalist, like I did. I experiment with a lot of stuff. Some works, some does not. But I'm convinced that the more barefoot is, or at least more minimal. Most shoes like this even have like a heel where you go from at least a 5-degree or 5mm slope. And you want to be more minimal. And I know it's still impact because you go, oh wait, I'm still walking and I'm still boom, pounding.
Yeah.
But you'll be able to, I'll tie this in with the 180 minus the age because that's what kind of how you can summarize all the body types. is it's less impact because it's more natural. You're not like sloping your heel up, and you're not on a treadmill, which kind of put your foot down and it slides, and then the other foot goes and you slide. You get a totally different ground reaction force.